Hello, this is Two Ladies Midwest Adventures. I'm Julietta, and I'm reading chapter 11 of Heaven is for Real. After we got home from the hospital, we slept for a week. Okay, I'm exaggerating, but not much. Sonia and I were completely drained. It was like we had just been through a 70-day almost car crash. Our wounds weren't visible on the outside, but the soul-tearing worry and tension had taken its toll. One evening, about a week after we got home, Sonia and I were standing in the kitchen talking about money. She stood over a portable table next to our microwave, sorting through an enormous sack of mail that had accumulated during Colton's hospital stay. Each time she opened an envelope, she jotted down a number on a sheet paper, lying it on the counter. Even from where I stood, leaning against the cabinets on the opposite side of the kitchen, I could see the column of figures getting awfully long. Finally, she clicked the pen closed and laid it on the counter. You know how much money I need to pay the bills this week? As both the family business and bookkeeper. Sonia asked me that question regularly. She worked part-time as a teacher, so we had that steady income. But it was a relatively small stream. My pastor's salary was also small, columned together from the tithes of a small but faithful congregation. So the bulk of earning came from our garage door business, and that income waxed and waned with the seasons. Every couple of weeks, she presented me with the figures, not only on household bills, but on business payables. Now there were also several massive hospital bills. I performed a rough tally in my head and offered her a guess. Probably close to $23,000, right? Yep, she said and sighed. Might as well have been $1 million with me unable to work the garage jobs because of my broken leg. Then the hyperplasia. We already had burned through our savings. Then, just when I was getting back into full swing, Colton's illness hit, knocking me out of work for nearly another month. We had about as much chance of coming up with $23,000 as we did of winning the lottery. Since we don't play the lottery, those chances were zero. Do you have any receivables? Anything due you can collect? Sonia said. She asked because she had to, but she knew the answer. I shook my head. I can put off some of these, she said, nodding toward the envelope stack. But the 10th bills are definitely due. Here's a great picture of how small a town Imperial actually is. Folks have tabs or accounts they run at places like the gas station, the grocery store, and the hardware store. So if we need to fill up our loaf of bread, we just swing by and sign for it. Then on the 10th of the month, Sonia makes a 15-minute trip around town to settle up our 10th bills. One of the cool things about living in a small town. On the other hand, when you can't pay, it's a lot more humbling. I sighed. I can go explain the situation, ask for more time. Sonia held up a sheaf of paper, a little thicker than others. The medical bills are starting to come in. One of them is $34,000. How much is the insurance covered? There's a $3,200 deductible. We can't even pay that right now, I said. Do you want me to write the TITH check? TITHE. Sonia asked, referring to our regular weekly donation from the church. Absolutely, I said. God has just given our son back. There's no way we aren't going to give back to God. At that moment, Colton came around the corner from the living room and surprised us with a strange proclamation that I can still hear to this day. He stood at the end of the counter with his hands on his hips. Dad, Jesus used Dr. Holleran to help fix me, he said, standing at the end of the counter with his hands on his hips. You need to pay him. Then he turned around and marched out, around the corner and gone. Sonia and I looked at each other. What? We were both taken back. Since Colton had seen the surgeon as a source of all the poking, cutting, prodding, draining, and pain, Now here we are, just a week out of the hospital. He seemed to have changed his mind. Well, I guess he likes Dr. Holleran now. Oh, Holleran, Sonia said. Even if Colton had found it in his heart to forgive the good doctor, though his little proclamation in the kitchen was weird. How many not quite 4-year-olds analyze family financial woes and demand payment for a creditor, especially one he never partially liked? And the way he put it, too. Dad, Jesus used Dr. O'Halloran to fix me. Weird. Even weirder, though, was what happened next. With $23,000 in bills due and payable immediately. We didn't know what we were going to do. Sonia and I discussed asking our bank for a loan, but it turned out we didn't need to. First, my grandma Ellen, who lives in Ulysses, Kansas, sent us a check to help with the hospital bills. Single week, more checks started arriving in the mail. 50, 100, 200. With all the cards and notes said thing, we heard about your troubles and we're praying for you. Lord God put it in my heart to send you this. I hope it helps. By the end of the week, our mailbox was full again, but with gifts, not bills. Church members, close friends, and even people who only knew us from a distance responded to our needs without our even asking. The checks added up to thousands of dollars, and we were astonished when we found that, combined with my grandma said, the total was what we needed to meet that first wave of bills, almost to the dollar. Not long after Colton became a pint-sized collection agent, he got in a little bit of trouble. Nothing huge, just an incident at a friend's house where he got into a tug-of-war over some toys. That evening, I called him to the kitchen table. I was sitting in a straight-back chair, and he climbed up in the chair beside me and knelt in it. Colton leaned on his eyebrows and regarded me with sky-blue eyes that seemed a little bit sheepish. If you have a preschooler, you know it can sometimes be hard to look past their cuteness and be serious about discipline. But I managed to put a serious look on my face. Colton, I began. Do you know why you're in trouble? Yeah, because I didn't share, he said, casting his eyes down at the table. That's right. You can't do that, Colton. You gotta treat people better than that. Colton raised his eyes and looked at me. Yeah, I know, Dad. Jesus told me I had to be nice. His words caught me a little by surprise. It was the way he said it. Jesus told me. But I brushed it aside. His Sunday school teachers must be doing a good job, I thought. Well, then Jesus was right, wasn't he? I said. And that was the end of it. I don't even think I gave Colton any consequence for not sharing. After all, with Jesus in picture, I pretty much had been outranked. A couple of weeks later, I began preparing to preside over a funeral at church. The man who had passed away wasn't a member of our congregation, but people in town who don't attend service regularly often want a church funeral for a loved one. Sometimes the deceased is a friend or relative of a church member. Colton must have heard Sonia and me discussing the upcoming service because he walked into the front room one morning. Daddy, what's a funeral? All right. Walked to the front room one morning and tugged on my shirt tail. Daddy, what's a funeral? I had done several funerals at church since Colton was born, but at that age he was starting to become more interested in how and why things work. Well, buddy, a funeral happens when someone dies. A man here in town died, and his family coming to church to say goodbye to him. Instantly, Colton's demeanor changed. His face fell into serious lines and stared fiercely into mine. Did the man have Jesus in his heart? And suddenly asking me whether the man who had died was a Christian who had accepted Christ as Savior, but instantly caught me off guard. I'm not sure, Colton, I said. I didn't know him very well. Colton's face bunched up in a terrible twist of worry. He had to have Jesus in his heart. He had to know Jesus or he can't get into heaven. Again, his intensity surprised me, especially since he didn't even know this man. I tried to comfort him as best I could. I talked to some of the family members and they told me he did, I said. Colton didn't seem entirely convinced, but his face relaxed a bit. Well, okay, he said and walked away. For the second time in a couple weeks, I thought, Man, those Sunday school teachers are doing a good job. That weekend, Sonia dressed Cassie and Colton in their Sunday best, and we headed the half block down to the church and get ready for the funeral. As we pulled up to the SUV, I saw the Villiard Funeral Home hearse parked outside. Inside, we found the burnished oak casket standing off to one side of the foyer. 2 sets of open doorways led from the foyer into the sanctuary where the family was gathered for the flower service. Before moving to Imperial, I never heard of a flower service, but now I think it's a really nice idea. Family gathers before a funeral service, and the funeral director points out each plant, wreaths, and flower arrangement, explains who sent it, and reads aloud any messages of sympathy attached. These beautiful purple oslas come to you in loving memory from the Smith family. The pastor is supposed to be the flower service. I peeked into the sanctuary and caught the funeral director's eye. He nodded and indicated they were ready to begin. I turned to gather Colton and Cassie. Then Colton pointed to the casket. "What's that, Daddy?" I tried to keep it simple. "That's the casket. The man who died is inside it." Suddenly, Colton's face gathered into the same knot of intense concern, slamming his fist on his thighs, then pointed one finger at the casket and said in a near shout, "Did that man love Jesus?" Sonia's eyes popped wide, and we both glanced at the sanctuary doorways, terrified the family inside could hear us. He had to, Colton went on. He can't get into heaven if he didn't have Jesus in his heart. Sonia grabbed Colton by the shoulders and tried to shush him, but he was not shushable. Now nearly in tears, Colton twisted in her arms and yelled at me. "He had to know Jesus, Dad." Sonia steered him away from the sanctuary, hustling him towards the front doors of the church. Cassie following through the glass doors. I could see Sonia bent down, talking to Cassie and Colton outside. Then Cassie took her still struggling brother by the hand and started walking the half block towards home. I didn't know what to think. Where was this sudden concern over whether a stranger was saved, whether he had Jesus in his heart, as Colton put it, coming from? I didn't know this much. Colton was at the age where if something popped into his head, he would just blurt it out. Like the time I took to a restaurant in Madrid, Nebraska, and a guy with a really long straight hair walked in. Colton asked loudly that was the boy or girl. So we kept Colton away from funerals for a while if we didn't know for sure the deceased was a Christian. We just didn't know what he would say or do. All right, that was the end of chapter 11. 11. Like and subscribe so we can get to 1,000 subscribers. And once we hit 1,000, then we can start beekeeping. Jenny? Say hello.
Hello.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Like and subscribe so we can get to 1,000 subscribers so we can start beekeeping.